It's a great honor for me to be here, and tell you, this is the first conference which I was a speaker. Usually I speak at conferences, and typically I go run away, first of all, not to be attacked by someone. But it's the first, so I have reasons not to attend, the sessions. But it's the first conference where I sat in the audience. I was unable to leave. Yesterday I wanted to write my presentation. I was stuck in here, listening. So it was really, it's the first time. It's beyond, you told me it's a conference. You should say something else because it's far more entertaining than a conference. The conference are usually dull people saying how good they are, but this is great. So my talk, thanks. Let me see if this works well, because you guys are very techy. I'm not. All right, the scandal of prediction. Let me tell you this is Umberto Eco. Okay. Now, I was at dinner in Trieste in Italy not long ago, and then people at the table told me, hey, you look like Professore Eco, like Umberto Eco, like Professore Eco. So everybody started saying, oh, he looks like Eco, you look so much like Eco. Needless to say, I went up to my hotel room, went Google Images, right? Saw Umberto Eco and had to go on a diet in Italy, all right? Believe me, got on a diet in Italy, all right? This is what it caused. Now, Umberto Eco happens to be someone for whom I have immense respect as a scholar. Why? Because Umberto Eco has first of all, for a lot of reasons. He's entertaining, he's non-dull. And for scholars to be non-dull is something, it's rare and, okay. You should invite him, here, Umberto Eco. The other thing is he has a library that contains 30,000 volumes, okay? So with normal problems when you have a lot of books, the ceiling collapses and, all right. So, he's a monument in Italy, but he has 30,000 books. And he has two kinds of visitors. Type 1 and type 2 visitors. Type 1, they walk in, Dottore, Professore Eco, oh, impressive. Did you read them all? Okay. How many did you read? All right. So we have some people who think that a library is like something you ask your architect to make sure that it's well displayed, where you show off how much you've read. Okay. So you have where you focus on the books you've read, and you put them, like many academics I visit, you see their office, they show you the books they've read. Okay. And then you have a second category of people who understand that a library, the value in a library lies where? In the books sorry? Exactly, and it's a research tool, it's a tool, okay? It's in the books you did not read. So some people focus on the books they've read, and some people have an eye on what they have not read. Likewise, human knowledge, we are very good at acquiring knowledge with one problem. We focus on what we know, and we tend to not focus, except our enemies focus on what we don't know. But we people do not show up to interviews telling you on their resume what they have not done. People focus on what they've done. So our knowledge, we treat it exactly like a real estate ad in New York City. I don't know how many of you have looked for an apartment in New York City. If it does not say fireplace, it doesn't have a fireplace, right? So we tend to treat knowledge exactly as a property, like we acquire a good. And we tend to focus on what we know. In this talk, coming here, I wanted to talk a little bit of self-deception, and then I realized it was exactly like going to a conference, sitting next to, having to speak before Einstein about relativity. So I took out a lot of things from here, and Robert Rivers will talk about the self-deception component, but I will focus on the dynamics of randomness. Now, this is what I used to do. I was a pit trader at some point. I started actually as a pit trader, and this is what I used to do. So you can imagine it's very different from Umberto Eco's world, but you should invite a few for Pop Tech here, right? So traders. So let's play this thought experiment. But we're going to collect 1 million of those. You collect, assume fair odds, you put 1 million traders in a room. But then it's very universal. It could be predictors, 1 million, anything. Opinion, people who voice opinion, anything, right? You put 1 million of them, year one, you assume fair odds. That's their base population. Year two, if it's random, 50-50, you're going to have 500,000 successful traders, or successful investors, or successful thinkers, or successful something. Okay? What happened is their opinion mapped into reality for an entirely random reason. It's a thought experiment. Okay? No, I'm not saying reality is like that. I'm saying assume that we lived in a planet where you had that effect, or assume you can create that synthetic world where you can have that. Year 3, 250,000. So you just divide by 2. It's very simple. Even traders can divide by 2, so I guess. All right? And year 11, you're going to have about 1,000 geniuses just by luck because they were there, and then we're going to find the reasons. He eats tofu. He works late in the office. You're going to find the reason of these people. It can't be random. Successful, look at him, 11 years in a row. How can you be up 11 years in a row without having this deep insight? Okay, and where he went? He went to Wharton, he went to Columbia, these people here. Columbia, he studied under someone who knows Warren Buffett. When he attended Columbia, you find a reason. So this is what Professor Trivers will call later the post hoc fallacy, where after the fact we can always fit back an explanation to random data. I call it, in my new writing, I call it the narrative fallacy. You can narrate back, okay, and weave a causal link between, and if you're good at it, okay, particularly if you have been to law school. Right? All right? So this is, okay, now this effect, before, I'm not starting yet with prediction. I'm just showing you that if you have a large population of people making statements about the future, you are bound to find prophets. You're bound. And then people, even if they have bad years, they may hide the bad years from themselves, self-deception, or from you. So note that. And then needless to say that you go to bookstores, it's so easy, right? There is, you can buy books on lessons from these people, okay? Now I'm assuming a random world. Now if the world was not random, it wouldn't change too much. It would not change too much in number. Instead of having 11, you'd have 15, 20, or maybe you'd have 7, okay? So, and let me bring to mind something very interesting here, called a book called The Millionaire Mind. I hope, is the writer a member of iPod or something? Because it's the silliest book I know. Now, in The Millionaire's Mind, this gentleman went in and investigated 1,800 millionaires to see what is the cause of their becoming so successful. And he looked at their traits. Well, visibly they wear shirts, so maybe shirt can be the cause. Yeah, but there are other traits as well that you can fit. And one of them, the major one, was they take a lot of risk. That's what he found. So where is the fallacy here? Is that he did not look at those who took a lot of risks. All right? Because nobody wrote, the bankrupt person, failed person in life is mine. These people too take a lot of risk. So here we have, okay, so this shows in a nutshell the classical problem we have in social science, particularly economics, social science, and some hard sciences as well. Even some part of evolutionary thinking. All sciences where you're looking back, all right, you're seeing traits that have survived, you're not looking at a cemetery, and it's very difficult to find a publisher to, pay someone to write a book on failed people, okay? Now, let me start now with prediction. Okay? Topic number 1, what I will call epistemic arrogance. It's a disease that we all have concerning our own knowledge. And given that it's Saturday and I'm tired, because, partying last night and so on, okay? So I'm not going to run you through the test, because you're also, so if I'm tired, you are tired as well, all right? So I'm going to show you how the test is done. If you ask people to give you a high-low estimate with a 98% confidence level of any, say for example here you have the median age of US, try to guess, nobody's trying to gauge how well you know the subject. Nobody cares about how well you know the subject. They're interested how people set their high and low number, okay? So you may say median age of citizen according to you can say between 17 and 23 or between 30 and 41 with a 98 percentage level. This is such, and so what we're trying to figure out from this test, what we try usually to figure out, is how people calibrate their 2% error rate. In other words, if you put people through this test, and I put everybody here, which is a few hundred, okay, I should have, per question, I should have a total of questions, all right? 98% of the questions should be right. In other words, the real number should fall inside that range. So this is a standard test. that I've given to students. Average amount of money spent by parents, okay, on a child between 0 and 18 and 2,000 feet. You can invent that. You can take a dictionary and then, or take an almanac and then start, having these questions. So these are 4 questions, okay? So I'm not going to ask you to do them because you just have to count and raise hands. It's fatiguing, all right? And I don't have time, okay? But if I put you through this test, and here are the answers, okay? Typically, the 98% confidence level, okay, in other words, is really something close to 60%. In other words, your 2% error rate is likely to be 40%. Actually, let me be careful. No. If in some professions, right, it's likely to be 25%. In some professions, it's likely to be 80%. 2% error rate. This is empiricism. This test was done about 1,000 times. I've done it on so many populations of students that I was accused of running, illegal human experiments, all right? And I have never, that 2% rate typically on students, okay, if you do math students, you get a 35% error rate. If you do it on MBAs, it's 70%. Okay, so now, what I'm trying to extract is not what people know, but the difference between what they know and what they think they know. Now, this is tricky. This tool is to extract something called epistemic arrogance. It's a difference, how much, it's like my mother used to tell me, oh, you want to be a trader? Yeah, she said, be a great trader. Someone bought you at what you are worth and sold you at what you think you are worth. That was the joke that my mother gave me. But she said, be a great trader. But anyway, so here, what I'm doing is simply, okay, trying to gauge arrogance. And believe me, we have been growing with human knowledge. Our knowledge has, it's a body of knowledge. Library of Congress, swelling, okay? We know a lot of things. But it is a fact that many of us, including myself, we all have this disease, okay? Nobody's 2% error rated. Nobody's 2%. The best, maybe 10%, okay? We all our confidence about that knowledge is more than compensating, and it grows very fast. So this test is critical because the result of this test, and you can run it anywhere, and you see you can run it at a dinner table. At a dinner table, run it. Just tell them, how many books does Umberto Eco have? And then give me, what you think, a range with 98% confidence level. Dinner table, Thanksgiving dinner, you maybe have 12 people. Try it. You should have no more than one person wrong, and you probably have 9 out of 10 would be wrong, okay? So the person can set the range as wide as they want. Now with this I call it tunneling. When you look at the future, it has the same effect. If you went in and asked people to guess what the Microsoft sales will be next year, how many new inventions will be, they will make the same mistake. So we have this tendency to tunnel, okay, and to ignore the events that should happen, infrequently. Okay. So I call this epistemic arrogance. You can call it overconfidence, and there is a long list of tests of these, and across population it works everywhere. The only thing is the difference not between nationalities so much, the difference between professions. Now, who is best at it? The lowest, in other words. The 2% error rate is lowest for whom in professions? Sorry? I don't know if it's done for accountants. It's done for weather forecasters. Weather forecasters. Weather forecasters are the best. Actuaries are not good. And the worst? Who are the worst? No. Sorry? No, even worse. Security analysts are the worst. Individually, all right? People who go into security analysis are the worst. Okay, and economists are a little worse, all right? But they're maybe but they're smarter, they hide it, all right? They hide it better. Okay, so this is point 1. Point 2, let's look at the empirical record, okay? First effect of that tunneling, when you make projections in your mind and you look at what can go wrong, with what probability, you tend to underestimate what can go wrong. This is, you know what this is? Sydney's Opera House. So they think when you go to Sydney, you say, Order of British has Sydney Opera House. So I went on a pilgrimage to Sydney to look at the Sydney Opera House, but I had a reason. I was not going on pilgrimage because, they wanted to look different from Cincinnati. So they put this so it looks different because otherwise Sydney would be too common an Anglo-Saxon city. No. The reason I went there is because this is a monument to one human disease. And why? Can someone tell me why? Let me... Exactly. So it was scheduled to open in the early 60s, and it was budgeted to cost 7 million Australian dollars. It cost 117 million Australian dollars and opened 10 years later. And it was a scaled-down version of what was initially planned, okay? Now, this is the planning. This is a classical case of planning fallacy. When you plan, typically, you can also see how we deal with the future. This is an immediate result of the previous test. That people, they tunnel when they make projects. They tell you, well, it takes 6 months, and then things come out late. Why? We're going to see why they come out late. Because we tunnel. We don't take into account what can go wrong. There are very few exceptions of projects completed on time, and typically people underestimate the time to completion, not because their task, they know the task very well, but because they underestimate one single thing, what was unplanned. Okay, you think too much into the box within the project. On project, things go right. But the fact that the contractor's mother-in-law was murdered, or that someone, or his wife had, left them or something, you didn't forecast, okay? And these things happen. So this is already, it's a very simple test. You take all projects. Now, it so happened that every time governments try to invade countries, they also have this planning problem, but in a severe way. Nobody ever started a war, okay, planning, and nothing went unplanned. And that was so obvious visibly in the last such event. Okay? So, but I'll let Professor. Now, what's the reason? The reason is what I call the black swan. I'll go very quickly to explain the black swan. All these elements are necessary to see our plan, but the black swan is what I call is a classical, logical story, all right, metaphor, that tells that for a long time, everybody thought that all swans were white. So, so our projection of the swans we're going to encounter were all for them to be white, because all the swans that we saw were white. So it seems to be a very, good empiricism. Now, when they discovered Australia, they saw black swans. So the fact is that all past swans observed were white. It cannot allow you to make the statement that all swans are white, okay? You cannot go from the particular to the general, just like you cannot from what you've past observed. Typically, when you make projection, you use your past experience, and you underestimate these black swans. So I took a much more aggressive stance. I'm not interested in the logic of black swan. I'm interested in empiricism. And I'm making a very bold statement that much of what happens in history is determined by black swans. They're rare. Nobody pays attention to them. But if you sit down and look at what happened, okay, you will notice that the contribution of black swan is cumulatively huge, but nobody notices. Nobody pays attention to it. And let me show you one simple example. Benoit Mandelbrot, and now we're playing a hoax. Playing a hoax. We drew two S&P lines, and I'll tell you why it's a hoax. We drew two S&P lines. This is last 20 years of S&P, okay? S&P, the future. And there's a difference between these two, is that we removed the 10 most volatile days. All these large, look at it. You have a different animal. If you remove more days, but the reason we presented it like that is because we took the sample in which that effect of the black swan was the smallest. Because we were waiting, we did it like that, waiting for people to attack us, because economists, typically, economics is a science where they think they know a lot, and they can explain everything, so they don't consider that these events are worthy discussing or studying, and their statistics don't take that into account. So I have a little war with economists, which means that I need the bodyguard. No, I'm kidding. So but this is, okay, and this is the weakest effect in any commodity or any product traded is in the S&P. And here it is. You remove 10 days in 20 years. So 1 day in 500 explains half the returns. Okay? So the rare, and then we take companies, it's the same thing. Even it's far more accentuated for companies. Okay? But you say, oh, it's 1 day, nothing counts. So this is one of the reasons we fail to forecast. So I'm going to continue now with our failure to forecast by telling you now, I'm an empiricist. I'm a staunch empiricist in the sense that I don't like people to make statements look good in suits. So this is Bloomberg. And if anyone here has seen Bloomberg, you push echo every morning. And you can see what numbers come, event. And then they have survey here. What they call up the banks. And every bank has an official estimate of what that number is going to be. It's an economic number. So the prior number, you take here, housing starts. I don't know what that means. I don't care. So prior number, 2009K, all right? Actual, that survey, they ask economists, is 1970K. And here in white, you have the actual. They publish the actual. And these are the ones for the days for the 20th, you know, the numbers coming out. So basically, with this, you have an invaluable test to see how competent economists are at forecasting. Because what you have here is major forecast. That number up here is a major forecast, is a forecast by major Wall Street economists. But these guys are foolish enough to do it publicly, to publish a number instead of say it's going to be high or low, something vague. I mean, if you learn, you know, they're not competent enough for us to go and test it. Now, a very simple test. The test is, who's better at predicting that actual, okay, the surveys, is the average economist or the prior number? In other words, a naive interpretation of the past. In other words, I call it the cab driver test. You show numbers to a cab driver to explain to me, predict, okay? And effectively, who do you think? The prior works a lot better than all economists. So we're paying basically these people and GNP drain for them to wear expensive suits. 5,000, 6,000 suits, right? Dollar suits. All right, they go, they fly, they go in, it's the cost of the economy. Okay, now this is economists, all right? Of course, you do it with security analysts, you find the same thing, but something even more vicious with security analysts. It's that they're all gonna huddle here, okay? And the number is gonna come out, okay, the difference between the analyst is too small compared to the difference between the average difference, you know, the average analyst forecast and the actual one, which means they huddle. One guy comes up with some number, and all the other ones huddle, you know. They go in, they say, oh, no, yeah, he's right, and then they... So that number is not only random here, the survey, okay, but it's very high or very low, and there's no variance, so they almost have the same estimate. So with this, we can test, and there are indeed some tests. Not that many of them. Social science, economics, sociology, social science, and political science, they produced about 5 to 6 million papers over the past few decades. 5 to 6 million papers. I found 6 papers investigating their own method. All that counts for me is, are you better with all this talk, all these equations, all this, you know, can we use New York words? Okay, we say money talks and bullshit walks. Show me what you can predict, okay? There are only 6 papers investigating their own track record, okay? So here we have an idea of the quality of that science, okay? Now, needless to say that all these people are employed by the government and making long-term projections. And this is a place called the Woodrow Wilson Center where they invited me. Someone made a mistake from Washington and they invited me to go talk. So they made that mistake. We have people like that. And they're all in the business of the policy wonks making forecasts. And they had in their mind that, you know, so they had projection for oil prices 25 years down the road at $27 a barrel in January of 2004, okay? In a few months later, they had to revise it from $27 a barrel to $60 a barrel. Now, they don't understand if your forecast is so far off that perhaps there's something wrong with forecasting. What are you doing? You're doing it for Novocaine reasons? Why are you doing it? Analgesic reasons? Why are you doing forecasting? Is it for therapy? They're doing it for therapy. But they don't know they're doing it for therapy. So I was there talking to these people like that. Needless to say, they never invited me back. They said, oh, a serious conference. Nobody never invited me back. And after that, of course, on the web, you start seeing things popping out like this guy is arrogant, this guy, this guy, you know, all kind of things, ad hominem, no attacks on my point. Now, this is the problem we have is they don't realize that a forecast has no validity unless you know an error rate. Okay? about the forecast. You cannot forecast unless you know error rate. Now, there's a similar thing with political scientists. Actually, we have, I'm not going to go through this. There's a similar thing with the political scientists. So now here we have, ever in history, we human, I heard someone today talk about religions. It is valid, to question beliefs that don't have scientific grounding, definitely, and then teaching children. But the enemy is not there for scientists. The enemy is there. It's a fortune teller. In history, we've always given everything. Oh, yeah, tell me the future. If someone tells you the future, he owns you. And nobody checks the existence of such person, fortune teller. This is Caravaggio. And the guy was smart because this painting has one other attribute. You know what the other attribute is? Sorry? No, look at here. She's stealing the ring from his finger as she's reading into the palm of his hand. Okay? Now, this is forecasting. Before I go into the limits of a few minutes. So standards of truth. So we have to compare standards of truth. The difference is suit. Okay? But let me tell you more depressing. Please don't attack me on this. It doesn't make much difference. Okay? So, topic 2, limits. Let me tell you now very quickly. Now we have fundamental limits to forecasting. Where are they from? Technology. Karl Popper had a great idea. In it, he was attacking historicism. This is Karl Popper. No, nobody told me I look like Karl Popper, so no diet. I mean, I can't do anything about it anyway if I look like him. All right. So he figured out the following thing. This is the wheel. All right. If you're going to figure out, you're sitting down in 5000 BC, and you want to figure out what those guys are going to do at PopTech in Maine, you need to figure out all the predict the technological innovations. No? Now. So you're going to have to predict, the first thing that happened was 3,500 years ago, Mesopotamia, currently in Iraq, like where they're fighting, they invented the wheel, all right? So you have to predict that, no? So let's think about it. If you know that you're going to invent the wheel so you can make a projection of what's going to happen in history, what did you have? You know how to make the wheel, okay? So this is a classical problem in forecasting, is that to see you need elements from the future itself, okay, to be able to forecast. That's the first problem. Secondly, historically, okay, I'm going to go through the point very quickly, all right? Because last time I spoke, the whole talk, which lasted an hour, was about that. And actually, I was in Romania last week, where instead of half an hour, I showed up, I spoke for half an hour, and they said, no, you have 3 hours. So I said, all right, yeah. So okay, if we go through a history of, it looks like the sleepwalking. Our discovery had been like sleepwalking. Nobody ever found anything relevant that he was looking for. And let me tell you again. We are here in PopTech. I'm holding a laser, and we are here because of the computer, all right? Was the computer designed for people to chat? For example, when a speaker's talking, so you can go look at this bio on the web. Was not, okay. Was the laser designed for people to do eye surgery or for speakers to point at funny images? No. Okay. The laser was, let's take the laser. The laser was made by a physicist at Columbia to show off because he had a big ego that he could split light beams. And people laughed at him, said, this guy is like for the sake of, he's inventing product for the sake of inventing product. It took a while before people, okay, realized that it could be used for eye surgery. And he had no clue himself. So basically, we've been inventing tools, never knowing what we had on our hands. And you know very well the story of the computer. The Watson from IBM, who is it, okay, said, no more than 5 of those machines worldwide. So basically, we have a very poor track record at predicting what we're going to invent. Whenever we have something significant, we don't know it. And whenever we have something insignificant, guess what? It's on the cover of Time magazine. All right, honestly, like interferon or like Sedgway or things that turn out. So basically, we are not good. Things that don't work. That's the rule. If you find it on the cover of Time magazine, it's not going to be of significance. That works empirically. It's a beautiful rule. All right, okay. And if it's not, you have a whole catalog of things that either found by survey, even the discoveries that were planned. Okay, people did not know what they had on their hands. Okay, how much more? Is this serious or it's fast? It's good fast. It's not accurate. Okay, so I'm going to continue now with one more element of forecasting, okay, called, this gentleman is Poincaré. I know I don't look like him. No, please don't tell me that. And he figured out, well, actually what later on Lorenz discovered is something that later on became chaos theory, which became, oh, we're going to forecast using chaos theory. And if chaos theory tells you one thing, it tells you the limits of your ability to forecast, to project in the future. And let me tell you, give you this very simple example of billiard balls. If you have, if you have a convex surface and you hit it, the angle is multiplied. Okay, it can be multiplied. So an error in the precision of your estimation can multiply the angle in such a way. I'm going to give you the gist. To predict how the trajectory of one billiard ball is trivial. 2, it's okay. To predict 9, you need to take the weight of a person in a room into account because of gravity effect. To tell you how precise you need to be to project 9. To project up to 53 shots ahead, you need to take into account every single particle in the universe, including one that are 10 billion light years away, because of the gravitational pull, all right? So that is sort of like the extension of, this is called the Berry extension of this. So it basically tells us that our knowledge degrades very fast when you go in the future, from mathematically, okay? In a lot of, except, okay, in special conditions where we can see in the future. Now, I'd be glad to continue this with drinks later. And finally, I'm going to tell you one thing. This is Yogi Berra. He, of course, has most of my thinking, okay, I have a catalog of philosophers who dealt with the future. I'll start with Popper, of course, Montaigne, okay, Popper and so on, and then you have the great Yogi Berra. The problem is people are telling me he's not a philosopher. But Yogi Berra said one thing. He said, the future is no longer what it used to be. And let me tell you what it means. This guy is always dead right. It's getting harder and harder to forecast because the complication of the world is growing far faster. The degrees of freedom of any model, the possibilities are going far faster than our ability to model it, particularly in social science. I focus on modeling in social science. I have nothing but enemies because you go in and they have risk machines. You know this risk derivative machine. What I did was here, I do it with them, and then I show them their track record in these machines, and then they attack me. Okay? So basically, we're not doing very well with forecasting. So I have, well, it's at 0. Let me tell you here what I'm not saying. There's some guy attacked me in the New York Times. He wrote a whole page, a notional page against me. That was October 1st. But I was waiting for him because he read what I was saying. And what he said is that I'm saying that we should not forecast at all. And okay, so I am not saying, so it's very easy to read enemies because they make your point clearer. I am not saying we should not forecast. I am not saying we cannot forecast. I am saying that we should be more empirical about our limits, know our track error, know where we can do it better than other places, and be a little more, try a little less self-deception when it comes to forecasting large-scale variables. And then you can fool yourself in private life all you want. That's what I'm saying. Thanks. So I guess I'm done.